Can you tell the story of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in 1939? So they make an agreement, Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and that leads us, just like you were mentioning, in a matter of days.
Yeah.
How compact everything is. It's
Mm.
just really, really fascinating.
It's
How
absolutely
quick
beautiful summer in Europe, summer of 1939. You know, it's one of these sort of glorious summers that sort of never rains. It's just sunshine, sunny day after sunny day. It's kind of, you know, it's like that sort of golden summer of 1914 as well, you know, where sky always seems to be blue, fluffy white clouds, everyone's sort of, you know, but this sort of, the storm clouds of war, to use that cliche, are kind of brewing. The Russians have reached out to Britain and France and said, come on over, let's negotiate, you know, let's see what we can do. And there is just no stomach for that at all. I mean, if ever there is I think, a mistake, that's Britain and France should have been a bit more into real politics than they were. That it's such an opportunity to ensure that to snooker the Third Reich, and they don't take it, because, you know, in many ways they see the westward spread of communism in exactly the same way that the Nazis see the threat of the westward spread of communism, as something that's every bit as repellent as Nazism, and they don't want to be getting into bed with these guys. Of course, they kind of have to kind of change tack on that one in summer of 1941 in, you know, very quick order. And that's the whole point about Churchill appeasing Stalin. I mean, you know, it's all very well people saying, well, you know, Churchill wouldn't have appeased Hitler in the 1930s, but he does appease. He appeases all the time. And they miss that opportunity. And the French and British delegation is third tier commanders, generals going over. It's a shit show. I mean, excuse my French, but I mean, it's just it's a nonsense. That they're not ready for it. They're not prepared. The British guy, Admiral Drax, doesn't have any authority. The whole thing's a complete joke. It's never going to get anywhere.
You tell the story of this quite beautifully, actually. Again, it's such a human story. I mean, it seems like the Stalin and Soviet.
They've already made up their mind.
But
well, I don't think they have. I think what they
wait. I mean, you described quite well that they value in-person meeting.
Yes.
So, like, Chamberlain should have just gone to Moscow.
Yeah, get on a plane.
Like it's such a maybe it's a simplistic notion, but that could have changed the trajectory of human history right there.
I really think it could have done. I think that's much more grievous mistake than Munich.
Why are leaders so hesitant to meet? I'm told now by a bunch of diplomats that no, there's a process. You know, at first you have to have these diplomats meet and they have to draft a bunch of stuff. And I sometimes have this simplistic notion like, why not meet? Why not meet? Like, I think there is a human element there. Of course, especially when there's this force that is Hitler.
Well, yes, and because we humans, we like to interact.
Yeah.
And you like to see people in 3 dimensions. And, you know, I'm sure that's why you always quite rightly insist on doing your podcast face to face. Because you want to get the cut of someone's jib and you want to be able to see them, and you want to see the intonation and the expression and the whites of their eyes and all that kind of stuff. And that just does make a difference, of course, because, you know, we're fundamentally animals and we kind of, we want to be sizing people up. And it's much easier to do that when you're a few feet away from each other than it is on a video screen or through the prism of someone else.
Yeah, but there's also just, you see the humanity in others. It's so much easier. You see this in social media. It's so much easier to talk shit about others when you're not with them.
Yes.
And like, military conflict is the extreme version of that.
Yeah.
You can construct these narratives that they're not human, that they're evil, you can construct communist ideology, all these, you can project onto them the worst possible version of a human. But when you meet them, you're like, oh,
they are just a person.
They're just a person.
Well, it's the world's great tragedy that it's only a few people that want to go to war, and the vast majority want to live happily, contented lives, getting on with their neighbors. I mean, it has been ever thus. It's just, it is those few that kind of ruin it for everybody else. But anyway, to go back to Leningrad, back in August 1939, they go half-cock. They're disrespectful to Soviet Union as a result of that. It gets nowhere. Had they been able to put on a really, really firm offer there and then to the Soviet Union would have probably come in. I mean, the big thing is that the Soviet Union said, this is a big stumbling block. The Soviet Union said, yeah, but we want to be able to march through Poland if we get threatened by Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Both the British and the French just smell a massive rat there. They're basically saying, if they agree to that, what they fear is that the Soviet Union will just march into Poland and go, yeah, but you said we could, and take it, which they unquestionably would have done. But it would have stopped the World War, probably.
They're willing to appease Hitler. They're not willing to appease Stalin in that situation.
Well, they're not willing to appease anybody by that stage. That's the point.
Well, they appeased Hitler.
They did for the year before, but there's a bottom line, which is Poland. So it's changed. That's the point.
Right.
But anyway, the bottom line is they don't. There is a reluctance on the part of the French and the British to negotiate with the Soviet Union because they're communists. They don't like them. Don't trust them. Worry about what they're going to do with Poland, and they're going to be, jumping out of the fire into the kind of water, and it doesn't come off. And as a consequence of that, the Soviet Union continue to pursue more hardly, more vociferously, the opportunities that the Germans are offering, which is this split of Poland, because the Soviet Union wants that part of Poland back in its own sphere of influence, and it doesn't want to go to war just yet.
And the agreement that they won't attack each other, essentially.
Yeah.
Do you think Stalin actually believed that?
No, he believed it in the same way that Hitler believed it, that it was a cynical kind of, convenient bit of realpolitik for now. I mean, I think Soviet Union was as determined to get rid of the Nazis as the Nazis were determined to get rid of the Soviet Union. I think whoever fired first was not decided at that point, but I do think that from the moment that Hitler takes power in 1933, a conflict between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany is inevitable.
Yeah, so either direction, you think it's inevitable.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge amount of evidence for that. Stalin probably wanted it, like in 42, 43?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, and they're doing exercises and stuff and building out. He's not ready yet because he knows he's done the purges and he's got to get his army, he's got to get his armed forces back into shape and all the rest of it. But, so they have this incredibly cynical agreement, but at that point, Hitler's hands are untied. He no longer has to worry about the threat from the Soviet Union. He's got carte blanche to go into Poland, and he doesn't believe that France and Britain are going to go to war over Poland. He's wrong about that, obviously. But France and Britain, despite going to war with him, still do nothing. So, he's got away with it.